Moza Racing are a sim racing company based in China who have been releasing a couple of sim racing wheelbases for a number of years, and they've been making some more flashes here and there. Now you've got to consider that Moza are actually famous for making camera stabilizers and gimbals, so this is relatively new for them, but they've been doing well. This year they released the Moza R5 bundle and they made a wave. So when Moza called me up and said, "Hey Ricardo, do you want to review the R5 wheel?" I said, hell to the yes, as long as I can say what I want, and they said, okay, we'll send it along shortly. So here we are, and we are using this thing, and I've been using it for a few weeks now, and today I'm going to tell you whether this thing is actually good value, whether it's actually worth your time, and specifically if you've got a Logitech G920 or G29 or other entry-level non-direct drive wheel, I want to tell you whether or not this thing is worth your time. I think it is. Let's go. So first impressions are pretty good. This wheelbase is absolutely minuscule. This is the first thing that you'll notice when you use this thing. It is really tiny. For scale, here's a MacBook Pro, and this is the size of this wheelbase. So it's really, really small. Now it's finished in apparently aircraft grade aluminium, which I can understand. It looks pretty well built. It looks pretty nicely finished. It's got these strakes on the side, which are essentially there to release heat. It's got a passive heat sink. Essentially this thing gets hot and the heat just flies away. You can see the contacts for the quick release, so there's no actual parts or pins that can get stuck or broken. I'm looking at you, Fanatec. At the back, you've got ports for your dash, your pedals, your USB and your DC input, and a power button, and it really isn't that heavy, as you can see. Ooh. Now, the leather on this thing feels actually really good, and most of themselves say that this is hand-stitched leather, which I can say it does, and it does actually feel relatively authentic, which at this price point is a little bit ridiculous. Now, there are 22 buttons on the face here, but there are no rotary encoders, so you've got to be a bit smart about how you set your ABS and your traction control if you're into that kind of thing. I use the up and down buttons and the left and right. Now, the paddle shifters are, they're okay. They're all right. They're not magnetic items. They're just buttons, but they've got a pleasing tactile feedback to them, and they have a positive feel. So that's all you can really ask for. Now, the Moza Quick Release is pretty nice. It's pretty straightforward. You just line these up and you snap it on, and it's done.
Moza include their entry-level SRP lights in this bundle, which are a non-load cell set of pedals that are finished in a really lovely high-strength steel. The fact they're not load cell means that the braking force comes from pedal travel and not the amount of force you put through your leg, which has implications that I'll explain later.
Anyway, that's the first impressions of the wheel itself. It looks pretty nice, and for the price, I think you're getting a good deal. But how does it drive? Let's look at the software and let's go for a spin. Guys, before we get to the software and the drive, just appreciate how small this thing is on an actual sim racing rig. I mean, look at it. It cuts such a clean profile on the Next Level Racing DT track. I mean, look at this thing compared to these fat boys up here. There, it's just so small, I can't believe it. Anyway, enough about that, let's get onto the software.
The Moza Pit House software lets you change the settings of your wheel from individual force feedback parameters to changing the total force required. I really like the fact that you can really tweak the force feedback settings for specific surfaces, and the fact you can play around with the pedal curves to give yourself total control of your simming experience. Of the multiple different software programs from other manufacturers I've tried, I put Moza pretty high up there in regards to ease of use and customizability.
Hello friends, we're now in iRacing. I've recently graduated from the rookies, go me, and I'm going to take you through the Moza R5 and the positives and negatives, what I like about this bundle and what I don't. And we're going to use a Porsche Cup car, a car notorious for having wayward handling with that engine in the back and having no ABS or traction control. We're going to use VIR, a track that is inherently difficult, and I'm going to tell you what I like and what I don't like so much about this wheelbase bundle. Let's go. Okay, here we go. We are leaving the pits in what is a very exciting car, and we are using the new Moza R5 bundle. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about, the thing that's going to affect you most, more than the wheel, I think, is the pedals. Now, these pedals are just potentiometers that basically detect how much pedal travel you've got, rather than load cell pedals which detect how much force you put in. Now, this is important because load cell pedals are generally better for sim racing, and the reason for that is it makes it easier to develop muscle memory. Like a normal car that has a hydraulic system, the system works on pressure, not degree of travel, unless you've got obviously a drive-by-wire car like a Tesla. Now, these pedals seemingly have the same force, whether you're using the accelerator or the brake, which makes it hard to distinguish how much pressure to use when you're braking, because if you use too much, especially in a car like this, you end up locking up the brakes. But does that mean you can't use this in a car like this kind of pedal setup? No, I think you actually can. You just need to practice and take your time. There's a reason why there are people topping leaderboards in most games using just a basic Logitech G920, G29, or even more basic setup than that, because they just practice. So practice makes perfect. I think it's generally going to be easier to get that muscle memory when you use load cell pedals compared to something like this, but that doesn't mean that this is completely redundant. And I think for an entry-level setup, I think it's a good start, and you can upgrade as and when you need to. The pedals themselves look pretty good. They look pretty premium, but they don't have a load cell. Now, if the pedals are that much of a problem for you, you can get the SRP accessory kit from Moza, which they brought in response to the criticism about their pedals. And to be honest, the wheel is pretty good, but the pedals leave something to be wanted by, but that is just a case of preference and practice. Now, I think the leather wheel feels pretty awesome. I think it's got a nice premium feel to it, and this wheel feels really nice in the hand, which is great if you're doing endurance racing or just a long stint for a while. It feels really, really good. I love the shift lights. I think they're really cool. It's a unique solution. There aren't individual LEDs. It's like a sweeping pattern that goes from left to right, green, yellow, and then red when it's time to shift up. I really think that's a cool touch. Now, the paddle shifters feel really nice to use. I mean, they're not a magnetic option, but they're nice and clicky, they're nice and tactile, and they're a quick switch. You get a good positive feedback from them, and you know that your gear has shifted. Now, let's talk about the thing you guys are all waiting for, and that is the force feedback. Now, the first thing that they need to get right is the oversteer and understeer. Those big feelings, the easy, obvious ways of knowing what your car is doing, and they've done a fantastic job. This software is tuned in such a way that you have good knowledge of what's going on with the wheel and what's going on with the car. So you feel like you're connected to the wheels. Now, obviously that will depend on the game that you're playing, but in all the titles I've tested, it's felt pretty good. Now, I think even the subtleties are there. If I just go off the grass there a bit, you get that rocking through the wheel, and it's not really troubling the force feedback. We're not peaking or clipping or anything like that. No, I think this wheel is actually quite phenomenal.
In a world where direct drive offerings are becoming ever more affordable, the question remains, should you choose this over a slightly cheaper belt-driven or gear-driven wheel? And if you do, will 5.5 Newton meters of torque keep you entertained enough? The answer, in my opinion, is that if you have the money and you're looking to enter the hobby, this is a fantastic bundle to get you started. You get a nice wheel, a direct drive wheelbase that provides excellent informative feedback, and a set of pedals that are nicely finished. And although they're not load cell pedals, that's something you can always upgrade later, either using Moza's own load cell pedals or mixing and matching with another manufacturer. Now, 5.5 Newton meters may not seem like a lot when there are a lot more powerful wheels around, but if your main aim is to have fun, it's more than enough, and unless you're planning to become the next esports champion, you'll be more than competitive given the level of detail available in this force feedback. And if you're planning on buying this bundle, feel free to use my link in the description below to get 5% off. It helps the channel and it helps you. See you later.